Banfield. She's I'd say the premier education activist. Maybe Jody is it's head to head, you know. But in the state, what?
We're not in competition.
No, I don't. I know, but I'm just saying. You know, who would I put ahead? Anyway, forget that. So she has been working in this area for what, a decade more? 2 decades?
Oh, yeah.
2 decades, yeah. And also she has been a math educator, so she can talk about numbers.
Math tutor to some of these kids. My role in New Hampshire when we moved here a little over 20 years ago, I really kind of started looking at education because of my own kids. I wanted to make sure my own kids got a good education, and that's really how I started out. Because I was like, you know, what is going on with public education? I went to public schools, my husband did. And when I got to college, I was like, why did this person over here who went to private school got such a better education? And that was a long time ago, so it's gotten worse. And so that's why I started this. And I just started researching, and I came across people throughout the country, and even internationally, who was focused on what's going on in that classroom. The money part wasn't really the focus. It was more about what are we doing in the classroom to make our kids, or help our kids get the best education that you can buy, because we spend ungodly amounts of money. So I just want you to know where I'm coming from. And so my focus was really on curriculum, teaching, getting the best teachers. How do we do, where's the formula? And we have a formula. And it was done in Massachusetts prior to 2010. Their kids were finishing at the top in the country. Their kids were finishing near Singapore, the top international countries. So there was absolutely no need to divert from that formula. We just needed to really duplicate that formula, but we didn't. Instead, we did Common Core and Next Generation Science Standards, and so everything kind of got dumbed down. We didn't really use what we could have just used south of the border. But those people in Massachusetts, it was because really the college professors were involved. They saw what was coming home from their kids. It didn't look good, and they really got involved and developed some of the best standards, tests, and really focused on academics. And it's not a difficult recipe, but we have diverted from that, and that's what the big problem is. So Drew did a great job of kind of telling you from a high level of where the problems are, and I'm going to dig down a little deeper. I'm going to go into the weeds with you, so you understand really what's going on in the classroom. Why are our kids not able to compete, not able to test where kids in Singapore, Japan, Russia, the countries that are finishing at the top? Why can't we do this? Well, we can. We've just chosen not to. We've chosen not to use that model. And so until we use that model, I don't think we're ever going to relate. We're just going to throw money. So I'm going to kind of go through some of the, because when I lived in Bedford, I lived in Bedford for about 20 years. I moved out to the seacoast about 5 years ago. I also served on the Bedford Taxpayers Association. So I would go through the budget. I would look at stuff. And, by no means am I an expert on school budgets, but I could also look at things. I did a presentation in Seabrook about a year ago, and I went through their curriculum, I went through their teaching methods, and I went through things, and I went before the school board, and I identified so many problems in that school. Now, do you think they did anything about it? No. Unfortunately, the school board members who really care were outnumbered, and they're not going to do anything about it. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to drill down a little bit, and so you understand you can't just look at a budget. You've actually got to dig a little deeper. So where are some of the problems with the spending that I can help you identify? First of all, federal grants. When federal grants come into the state, they'll come through the Executive Council. A lot of times they go to the Department of Education, and then they're distributed to schools. And those federal grants, a lot of times, will run out. And who gets left holding the bag? The local taxpayers. Because you think they're going to end those things that they brought in? No. They'll just add it to the budget. And we saw that at Merrimack. So Merrimack, increased their budget for some programs that they were using up there. So that's normally how it starts. It starts sometimes that way. Not always, but if you're not looking at these grants, then you're missing something. And the grants have a lot of strings attached to them. And believe it or not, when you read the grant applications, I'm reading them, and they're saying, your teachers have to teach this way in the classroom. Where are your school board members? Because isn't this something you guys should be doing and deciding at the local level? But they will have literally strings attached and dictate what's going to happen in that classroom. And oftentimes, what they tell teachers to do is some of the worst ideas out there. So I'll give you an example. Math, because that's where I tend to focus. They'll tell the teachers you have to use the inquiry-based teaching method in the classroom. Discovery learning. Now, who in the hell thinks you can discover math? Who thinks you can inquire your way through math? Guess what that means? You hire a tutor who's willing to teach your kids, because the teachers up there told, do not teach these kids math, let them discover math on their own with little guidance. So you see, so now you're wondering, why can't these kids do math? Well, there's one of your problems. You took federal grants, they told you, and some of them are not federal grants, some of them come from Nellie Mae and the organization out of our university. They have that string in there a lot of times. So, federal grants is one thing to look at. If you're going to go through your budget, I would suggest looking at that. One of the federal grants that came into New Hampshire, this was several years ago, was the SAMHSA grant. That was geared towards mental health. Now, my God, we need mental health for our kids, we need mental health for people in our state. But again, I'm looking at this going, well, wait a second, there's times where our hospital for our kids, you can't get a child in there because it's filled up. But what are they going to do? They're going to take that money instead and use it where it's actually needed. They're going to put it into the schools. And now we're going to hire school psychologists, school counselors, social workers, and we're going to bring in social emotional learning, and we're going to bring in all of these programs, and we're going to help you do this, but then they're going to pull the money away from you. Number one. Number two, mental health in schools is a disaster. I mean, we couldn't even get that right. We had schools giving personally identifiable mental health information away on these kids, and the parents didn't even know. I could take a half hour on that, but I'm not going to. But the bottom line is, again, these are what's happening in the classroom. So now you're paying, in Merrimack now they're paying $500,000 on one of their RTKs that they did out there. So now you're going to have to pick up the tab. And does this even work? Good luck finding out if it works. Because I've read some of the studies, and some of the studies are not independent, they're not peer reviewed. They're, the people that are doing the studies tend to want good outcomes from it. So, poor curriculum selection. That's another area where you're wasting money. So, and again, the kids will need tutors if they actually want to learn the stuff. So a lot of times these online programs are $100,000. You're paying $100,000 and they're not learning. They're not learning the math, they're not learning the science, and you spend $100,000 on this program. I'm on a Facebook page, it's called The Science of Math, and teachers around the country are on this. And they go there to converse and try to figure out what can I do because our scores are so low and things like that. But this is what they're doing. They're wasting money on programs that are not good for schools. And if you know anything about the subject, if you know civics, if you know math, if you know science, a lot of times if you actually go look at what they're teaching, you're probably going to be horrified by some of it. And the teachers are forced to do this. So that's where you spend money. Or maybe you have to hire tutors because your curriculum is low. Or maybe they have to hire more people in the classroom. I mentioned core teaching methods. You discover math. You have to acquire a way through math. So now your kids are falling behind, and now they don't understand this. Now we gotta hire some tutors in the school. Now we have to bring in Title I teachers, and we have to hire more people. So now you're seeing like, okay, wait a second. This isn't just we gave teachers too much of a raise, or we did this. A lot of it digs down into what they're actually choosing. And it's horrifying because I'm looking at these superintendents who are making near $200,000 a year. And I'm thinking, I know homeschoolers who pick up better curriculum for their kids than some of these public schools. It's terrible. It's absolutely terrible. So you have to do all that if you want to, increase the literacy in these subjects. Every Student Succeeds Act was 1,061 pages of federal law signed by Obama when he was in office, and so there's a lot of requirements in that. One of the requirements is you've got to bring technology into the schools, and I can tell you technology has done nothing to help our schools. Nothing. And I'm not against technology, but keep in mind that when you're buying all of this stuff, the iPads, and you need all these tech people in your school, it is primarily so that ed technology companies can make profits. That is it. It is not to help your kids. That technology is going to be outdated in 4 years. So what they're learning right now, it's iPad. It's really about the iPad. And again, I don't have a problem with teaching technology. I wouldn't mind if they did a computer course. But keep in mind that, again, all this money for technology, what is that getting you? Nothing. Nothing. Because our scores are not because it's really about the money. Inflated salaries at the SAE level. Let's just put it this way. I think probably every superintendent in the state makes more than the governor. Governor makes $146,000. My superintendent in Northampton makes $187,000, I want to say. A lot of it. So look at your SAU budget. Look at your SAU, the people who work in the SAU, because that's where a lot of the money is going. I find it absolutely absurd that the superintendents in the state make more than our governor, attorney general, the commissioner of education. They all make more than them. But if you find somebody who doesn't, I'm going to be kind of shocked. But maybe there is. Paying lobbyists. So out of the budget, they will take money for the New Hampshire School Boards Association, New Hampshire School Administrators Association. Now this isn't a big amount, but what happens is that money, you're paying that money to these organizations. These organizations have attorneys working for them, and then have this whole group. And what they do is then they show up at the legislature and they testify on bills. And a lot of times I'm looking going, if parents only knew what these people were doing and saying, like the School Administrators Association showed up about a year or two ago over, I'm sure you're familiar with a lot of the books that have been challenged in the schools. They have pornographic content in them. Yes, they do. I've seen it. And the School Administrators Association showed up to oppose bills that would put something in practice where parents could challenge these books and things like that. So this is what we're paying for. So we're paying for lobbyists to lobby against a lot of times what we believe. I've mentioned many times at school deliberative sessions to cut that funding, but again, school board members look at me like, no, we're not doing that. Professional development, I bet nobody looks at that. So professional development should be academic focused mainly, and I'm not saying that nothing else can be done with professional development, but a couple of years ago, again, I'm in Northampton now, I found out that the teachers were taking professional development day, and Seacoast Outright was going to come in and train the teachers. Does anybody know what Seacoast Outright is? Are there people that don't? Because this is, okay. So Seacoast Outright is an LGBTQ political organization. They were going to come in and train the teachers on transgender kids. And so I sat down with my superintendent and I'm like, okay, fine. They weren't going to pay them any money, but it's a professional development day. So you are, in some ways, paying, these teachers to sit through this professional development day, and you wonder why your scores are low, is this is what your teachers are doing sometimes. And teachers will complain about this. I mean, I've got teachers who feed me information, and they will complain about stuff like this. They're not happy with it either, right? But they can't speak up. Let me tell you something, they will be targeted and they will be eliminated. They will be eliminated. So don't wait around for your teachers to speak up, because they're not going to. They're going to be targeted and eliminated. So it's up to us to bring that forward. So another problem is the management of the class. So probably when you were in school, you probably were in school, 25 kids in the classroom, the teacher was up front teaching, and you left your classroom, went to the next one, and you learned. And again, when you're being told, the kids have to inquire and they have to discover learning, the teacher's not really doing a lot of teaching. And that's by design. So a lot of times, you might say, well, the teacher's, I actually had students say, the teacher's lazy, and I'm like, well, not necessarily. They're being told, they're forced to do it this way. And not all, but, I'm speaking in very general terms. But, so now you have a teacher who's not really teaching the material, or, and then you have now you've got other kids in the classroom who are disruptive, and now you've made a situation where you need extra people in that classroom. Because if you recall, we would have one teacher in the classroom. Now, you might have 2, 3 aides in there. Some of them, make decent money. This is what's driving up costs. And your teachers are told, you manage that classroom. So a teacher will, have to disrupt the students, and that student down to the principal's office, and they will come back with juice or something, and it's frustrating for the teachers too. But again, if we're not speaking up on this, and I've spoken up for other schools that are doing this, Stratton being an example not too long ago, I was addressing that, because they actually had a video where they were videoing, and you could see multiple people in the classroom, and I brought it to people's attention. This is what's going on in the classroom. Principal, used to be the principal handling this situation. Teachers are expected to manage these kids, and it's almost not impossible for some of these teachers. Those are some of the glaring problems. Right now, when the budget committees are meeting, right now is where your school board, so always remember that at the end of the year, they're all meeting, they're putting this budget together, and nobody's saying a word to them. This is actually when you need to be barking at them. Like, I just went through my budget last night. My budget committee meeting is on December 11th. Guess who's going to be there? I ran for budget committee. They won't put me in either. They want no part of that. But I will be there because I went through everything and I found things in there. And I'm going to, bring it to their attention. Now, what will they do with that? I don't know. But if you are not saying anything, what I have found is they're just going to basically do what the school tells them. Here's the budget. But it's actually your budget committee that's supposed to be coming up with the budget. It's in statute somewhere. Also, I had an accountant come out to Northampton, and she's really active, and I think it's Hudson, and she was telling us things to look for. That everybody should, ask for professional development. Every year you should say, I want to see professional development. Because first of all, I'll keep them honest. Looking at the professional development, they know you're going to be looking at it every year. You're going to be barking if it's not, good quality professional development. Supplies, what are they using as supplies? They put the supplies down, and they put an amount down. Have you ever looked at what they're actually spending the money on? Because she had covered quite a bit of spending that was ridiculous, and she brought it to their attention. Speakers, like she found a speaker was like one day in school was like $7,000 or something like that. They paid a speaker. These are the kinds of things that they just do, and we never catch it. Nobody's looking at the details. They'll give you a budget, but they're not going to go through. It's up to us to do that. We have to start doing that. Look at the salaries. Remember, a lot of these people are only working 9 months year. Our nurse makes over $80,000 in Northampton. Oh, by the way, we pay $39,000 per student in Northampton. And if you're looking at the state number, that state number is not, the state number takes out some of the spending. So what you have to do is you have to take your budget and divide it by the number of students, and that will give you per student spending. Okay, the state number will be lower because the state will take out transportation. The state will take out certain dollars because that can vary. So if you're comparing, schools, yeah, that state number could be a better number to use. But if you want an accurate number of what you're spending per student, you have to take that budget and divide it. And every year at the deliberative session, I ask them to do it so they can announce it to everybody because they cannot stand when I bring that up. Because they will get out there and they'll say, oh, we're only spending, $29,000 per student. And then of course I go up, like, can you divide and tell me what the actual number is? And so that's how you do it. You bring it up so everybody can hear it. So yeah, they go through the salaries. And should teachers be paid a fair wage? You want them coming back, of course. But some of this, you're looking at it, and Elliott Hospital nurses are making, $67,000 to start, and our school nurse, I told the nurse this last night when I was talking to our nurse practitioner, and she found out, she found out that our school nurse is being paid $80,000 a year. And you have three months off, and you have vacations, and you have all this other stuff. And I'm not begrudging. I have a nurse in my family, and I love them, and they do hard work. But we have to be reasonable. We hired a resource officer at $90,000 a year for little Northampton. The deliberative session, this is where they can increase your budget. And a lot of us don't show up. And I can tell you, living in Bedford, I was there every year. I think I missed 1 year because I was sick. And we used to fill that place, we used to pack it, and we wouldn't let anything get through. And over the years, less and less people showed up, and now anything goes. And they can raise your budget. I seen it in Northampton. The first year I moved there, I went to the deliberative session, and somebody was mad that aid was taken out of the budget, and somebody got up and said, I want that aid added back in, and if you only have 20 people show up to the deliberative, and they raise their hand, and they added it back in. And so a lot of your taxes could be going up because you are not showing up to the deliberative session. That is one of the most important dates to put on your calendar. Bring your neighbors, bring your friends, because they can increase that budget. Matter of fact, last year, word got out that I was going to reduce the budget, and all these people showed up to vote me down. Well, I wasn't doing it, so they showed up anyway. But that's what, they can increase. I show up because I want to make sure that nobody's increasing the budget. I think that's basically it. I think we'll have questions after this, but those are just some of the areas that you got to dig down a little deeper. Right to know requests, 91 days. Right now, you should be looking at supplies, speakers, professional development, so you can make the argument. Look what I found. Look what I found.